Your 20s won't ruin your life with one big mistake. They'll do it quietly, through normal choices you never question, habits you defend, and a future you assume you can fix later. By the time you realize what happened, the damage is already locked in. Your 20s don't feel like a mistake. That's what makes them dangerous. Nothing is on fire. You're paying your bills. You're doing what adults are supposed to do. Buying things that feel reasonable. Making choices that everyone around you seems to be making. And yet, somehow, your bank account never really goes anywhere. Same balance, same stress, same quiet anxiety that you don't talk about because, on paper, you're doing fine. You tell yourself it's just a phase. You'll get serious later. You'll figure it out in your 30s. When you're making more money and life feels more stable. That story ruins people. Because your 20s aren't harmless. They're not neutral. They're not a waiting room before real life starts. They are the years when habits harden, expectations form, and your financial direction quietly locks in. You don't destroy your future with one big, obvious mistake. You do it with small decisions that feel normal. A car payment that doesn't seem that bad. Convenience spending because you're tired. Degrees, upgrades, subscriptions, and monthly obligations that slowly turn into a life that needs constant income just to stay afloat. Nothing feels reckless. That's the trap. Most people believe their 20s are for enjoying life, and their 30s are for getting disciplined. As if discipline magically appears with age. As if you can spend a decade training yourself to consume, then suddenly flip a switch and build wealth. It doesn't work that way. Your 20s are not practice years. They are the foundation. The choices you normalize now become the defaults you carry forward. And those defaults decide whether your future feels open or boxed in. Welcome to Quietly Broke. This channel exists to talk about the things no one around you is saying out loud. Not hype, not shortcuts, just uncomfortable truths about money, identity, and the invisible cost of normal decisions. If this way of thinking already feels uncomfortably familiar, consider subscribing. It's the best way to support the channel and help keep these conversations going so we can keep making videos that actually matter. Before we go any further, I want you to answer this honestly. Which feels more true right now? A. I make money, but it keeps disappearing and I don't really know why. B. I don't make much yet, but I feel in control of where it goes. Comment A or B below. Your answer matters more than you think. If part of you recognized yourself in that question, that's not coincidence, it's the moment awareness begins. And awareness is the only place real change ever starts. Most people think money problems are about not earning enough. They assume once the paycheck gets bigger, everything will fall into place. But that belief misses what's actually happening beneath the surface. Money doesn't fix direction, it only amplifies it. What really shapes your financial future isn't income. It's the pattern your decisions follow over time. This is where people get their 20s completely backwards. They assume these years are temporary, chaotic, and disposable, a time to spend freely, live now, and worry later. But the truth is, your 20s are when compound effects quietly do the most damage, or the most good. Compound interest isn't just a finance concept. It's a law of momentum. Small choices, repeated consistently, don't stay small, they stack, they accelerate, and eventually, they feel permanent. Money compounds, yes, but so do habits. So does your tolerance for stress. So does your relationship with consumption. Every time you choose convenience over intention, or status over stability, you're not just spending money. You're training yourself. That training matters more than the numbers. $100 invested early isn't powerful because of the amount. It's powerful because of the time attached to it. That same $100 spent carelessly doesn't just disappear, it removes decades of future growth. And the scariest part is, you never feel the loss when it happens. You only feel it years later, when you're working harder than ever and still not getting ahead. This is why waiting is so expensive. People tell themselves they'll start saving when life calms down. They'll invest when income improves. They'll build discipline when things feel more stable. But stability rarely comes before systems. It comes because of them. By the time most people realize something is wrong, their habits are already locked in. Their lifestyle has adjusted upward. Their obligations are fixed. Their flexibility is gone. And here's the part that almost no one wants to accept. The most powerful decisions in your 20s don't feel powerful in the moment. They feel boring, quiet, sometimes even pointless. They don't impress anyone. They don't signal success. In fact, they often make you look behind. But direction doesn't need applause. It needs consistency. When you understand this, money stops being the main character. Identity becomes the focus. You're no longer asking, how much do I make? You're asking, what am I reinforcing? Because once your direction is right, growth becomes inevitable. Once you see that direction matters more than income, the next question becomes unavoidable, if small. Repeated decisions shape your future. Which ones actually deserve your attention? Most people get stuck here. They either obsess over everything at once or fixate on flashy moves that feel productive but change nothing. What actually works is quieter. Fewer decisions, higher leverage, purchases that don't just consume money, but change what money can do for you over time. The first purchase that truly moves the needle is investing in a side hustle. Not as a fantasy, but as a system. The biggest misconception is that side hustles are free. Something you just try on the side. In reality, the ones that go anywhere require upfront investment. Tools, software, equipment, education, time, and that's exactly why they matter. You're not just buying gear or courses. You're buying optionality. In your 20s, you can take risks with asymmetric upside. If it fails, you recover. If it works, it can permanently change your relationship with income. The mistake people make is chasing what looks profitable instead of building on what they already know. Real leverage comes from stacking skills you already have, not starting from zero every time something trends online. The second purchase is one that feels almost boring, which is why it's so powerful. Consistent investing in broad index funds through tax-advantaged accounts doesn't excite anyone at a party. But it quietly does something nothing else can. It turns time into an ally. You're not trying to outsmart the market. You're letting systems work while you focus on living. The real advantage isn't returns. It's automation. When investing happens before money hits your checking account, it stops being a decision and becomes infrastructure. Over decades, that infrastructure compounds into freedom most people don't even realize is possible until it's too late. Then there's education, but not the kind that buries you in debt and promises status. The education that matters is practical, applied, and often unglamorous. Books that change how you think. Courses that teach skills the market actually rewards. Knowledge compounds longer than money because it follows you into every future decision. A single skill learned early can raise your earning ceiling for decades. And unlike money, skills can't be taken from you during downturns or bad years. They make you resilient. Closely tied to this is strategic travel, which most people misunderstand completely. This isn't about escaping your life or collecting photos. It's about expanding your internal range. When you're forced to navigate unfamiliar environments, solve problems without your usual safety nets, and interact with people who live differently, something shifts. You become more adaptable, more confident, more capable. That perspective shows up later in ways you can't predict. In careers, businesses, and relationships. When done responsibly, using rewards and paying balances in full, travel can be an investment in judgment, not an expense in distraction. The final purchase in this group is real estate, but only when it makes sense. Not as a rite of passage, not as proof of adulthood, as leverage. Real estate works because it combines appreciation, cash flow, and other people's money. Strategies like house hacking aren't glamorous, but they allow you to control assets early without suffocating yourself financially. It's not passive, and it's not for everyone, but when aligned with your situation, it can create stability and income that reduce pressure everywhere else in your life. What matters isn't doing all of these. It's understanding why they work. Each one shifts your trajectory by increasing your capacity. Capacity to earn, capacity to invest, capacity to adapt. They don't just change your finances. They change your options. And that's the common thread most people miss. Wealth isn't built by chasing returns. It's built by buying leverage early and letting it compound quietly while everyone else is distracted by appearances. When your purchases expand what's possible instead of shrinking your flexibility, money stops feeling like something you're constantly reacting to. It becomes something you're deliberately directing. And yet, even with the right direction and the right leverage, Everything can quietly fall apart if you ignore the forces that drain momentum faster than you can build it. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They focus on growth but ignore protection. They add new strategies but never fix the leaks. And over time, those leaks erase years of progress. The first one is expensive transportation. Not cars in general, but the belief that a car is a symbol of progress instead of a tool. When you lock yourself into large monthly payments, you're not just paying for metal and wheels. You're selling future flexibility. Every dollar committed to a car payment is a dollar that can't build anything else. It can't compound. It can't give you options. It simply disappears, month after month, in exchange for an image that fades quickly. The real cost of an expensive car isn't depreciation. It's opportunity. It's the job you can't leave, the risk you can't take, the investment you can't make because your income is already spoken for. Cheap, reliable transportation doesn't feel like success, but it buys something far more valuable than status. It buys breathing room, and breathing room is where good decisions come from. The second silent destroyer is neglecting your health. This one is harder to see because the consequences are delayed. You can push through exhaustion in your 20s. You can live on poor sleep, bad food, and constant stress and still function. But function isn't the same as perform. Over time, low energy becomes your baseline. Burnout becomes normal. And consistency, the single most important factor in building wealth, becomes impossible. Health isn't a lifestyle choice. It's infrastructure. Your ability to think clearly, work steadily, and follow through over years depends on it. You don't lose wealth because you skipped a workout. You lose it because poor health slowly erodes your capacity to execute, to adapt, and to seize opportunities when they appear. What makes these two so dangerous is that they feel justified. Everyone finances cars. Everyone is tired. Everyone is busy. But when you accept those norms, you quietly accept fragility. Wealth doesn't grow in fragile systems. It survives in resilient ones. And when you step back and look at everything together, a pattern starts to emerge that most people never notice while they're inside it. None of these decisions exist in isolation. They either reinforce each other, or they quietly cancel each other out. Growth without protection collapses. Protection without direction stagnates. What actually works is alignment, when your choices stop competing and start stacking. This is where the conversation stops being about money and starts being about identity. Most people don't fail because they chose the wrong strategy. They fail because they try to change everything at once. They overhaul their finances, their career, their health, their lifestyle, all in one burst of motivation. For a few weeks, it feels powerful. Then reality hits. The effort becomes unsustainable. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they drift back to familiar habits that feel safe. The people who build real momentum do the opposite. They move slowly on purpose. They choose one lever at a time and commit long enough for it to change how they see themselves. One system that runs without willpower. One decision that reduces pressure instead of adding it. That's where the real payoff is. Not the number in your account. Not the milestone. But the quiet shift in how you operate. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop chasing validation. You start valuing flexibility. You become someone who doesn't need to look successful because your life actually feels stable. And this part is uncomfortable. It means being misunderstood. It means driving the older car, skipping upgrades, investing when others spend, and staying patient when there's no applause. It means delaying gratification long enough that your future self doesn't have to negotiate every decision from a place of stress. 10 years will pass no matter what you do. That part isn't optional. The only real choice is whether those years compound in your favor or against you. Whether you look back wishing you'd paid attention sooner, or grateful that you did something different when it was still quiet. Start with one decision, one system, one shift in direction. Not to get rich fast, but to become someone who doesn't get stuck. When you zoom out and look at the entire picture, one thing becomes clear. Most financial struggles aren't caused by a lack of intelligence, effort, or even income. They're caused by momentum in the wrong direction. Your 20s quietly teach you how to live, not through big moments, but through repetition. What you normalize becomes what you tolerate. What you tolerate becomes what you defend. And before you realize it, Your life is structured around maintaining choices you barely remember making. That's why this conversation isn't really about money. Money is just the scoreboard. The real game is identity. Every small decision you make today is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. A vote for someone who reacts to life. Or someone who designs it. Someone who spends first and hopes later. Or someone who builds margin and buys time. These paths don't feel dramatically different day to day. But over years, they lead to completely different lives. The deeper lesson is this: freedom isn't created by one bold move. It's created by a series of quiet decisions that reduce pressure instead of increasing it. Systems instead of willpower. Direction instead of intensity. Patience instead of urgency. So how do you apply this right now? You don't overhaul your life. You don't try to fix everything at once. You pick one area where pressure is highest and make it slightly lighter. One expense that buys flexibility. One habit that runs automatically. One decision that future you will thank you for. Then you let that change your behavior, your confidence, and your standards. That's how momentum flips. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe financial stress comes more from not earning enough? Or from how money is used once it's earned? Comment your answer below. I read the comments. And your perspective helps shape future videos so everyone can learn from each other. And if this kind of honest, grounded conversation resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to support Quietly Broke and help keep these discussions going.